It began with a press conference no one expected and everyone watched. Michelle Langford, once a celebrated civil rights attorney and television commentator, stood before a wall of flashing cameras in downtown Washington, D.C., her eyes blazing with determination. Behind her, a banner read "Justice for Truth." Reporters scribbled frantically as she announced a lawsuit that would send shockwaves through the political world. "I'm suing Senator John Kennedy," she said, her voice firm, steady, and echoing through the plaza. "For defamation, for slander, and for the damage he's done not just to my career, but to truth itself." The crowd erupted. Kennedy's critics gasped in triumph. His supporters scoffed, already dismissing it as another partisan stunt. But Michelle wasn't bluffing. Within hours, her legal team filed a 78-page complaint alleging that the Louisiana senator's public remarks during a televised hearing had knowingly and maliciously destroyed her reputation. The comments in question came from a fiery Senate Oversight Committee session weeks earlier. Kennedy had grilled Michelle during her testimony about political bias in media law enforcement. She'd gone viral for stumbling when he asked a simple question. "Ma'am, can you tell me in one sentence what fairness means when truth is subjective?" Her pause, just 7 seconds of silence, had exploded online. Clips of the exchange racked up millions of views, mocked by pundits and meme makers alike. But Kennedy hadn't stopped there. Outside the chamber, he told reporters, "That lady's about as consistent as a hurricane in a glass house." Michelle said that comment cost her contracts, invitations, and clients. Her sponsors dropped her. She claimed Kennedy's words made her a caricature of confusion in the national mind. The case was set to unfold under the nation's spotlight. Networks framed it as David versus Goliath, a woman taking on a powerful senator. But those who knew John Kennedy's courtroom past understood. He'd been underestimated before. When the trial opened, Kennedy didn't come swaggering in with a southern grin or trademark one-liner. He entered quietly, expression calm, carrying a worn briefcase he'd had since his days as Louisiana's state treasurer. He wasn't just defending himself. He was defending what he called the freedom to speak without fear. Michelle, meanwhile, appeared confident, wrapped in a sleek navy suit and a silk scarf. Her legal team, young, media-savvy, and armed with binders thick as dictionaries, looked like they'd been waiting for this moment their entire careers. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the judge, Honorable Ellen Ramirez, banged her gavel. "Ms. Langford, Mr. Kennedy," she began, "this court expects civility, clarity, and restraint. Let's proceed." Michelle's attorney, Jacob Newman, started strong. He played clips of Kennedy's comments, replayed news footage, and even called media analysts to testify how the senator's words weaponized ridicule against his client. They showed how hashtags mocking her had trended within hours, how invitations to panels vanished, and how donors pulled out of her nonprofit. But when Kennedy's turn came, his defense team, led by veteran lawyer and former federal prosecutor, Laura Benton, didn't attack Michelle. They reframed the narrative. "Senator Kennedy didn't slander Ms. Langford," Benton said, walking slowly before the jury. "He questioned her logic. That's called democracy. He challenged her argument, not her humanity." For the first few days, both sides battled evenly. Michelle was poised, articulate, at times even inspiring. Kennedy remained respectful but sharp, occasionally jotting notes or whispering to Benton. Then came the 9th day of the trial, the day that changed everything. That morning, Benton called a surprise witness. Reporters nearly fell over each other trying to catch her name. The defense calls Dr. Rachel Cooper. Michelle's face froze. Dr. Cooper was a data scientist from Stanford who'd once worked as a consultant for Michelle's media initiative, a program claiming to track political misinformation. Dr. Cooper took the stand, her demeanor calm and factual. Benton approached her. "Dr. Cooper, could you tell the court about your role in Ms. Langford's organization?" "I was the lead data analyst," Cooper replied. "I oversaw content verification algorithms." "Did Ms. Langford instruct you to alter or omit any data before public reports were released?" A silence filled the courtroom. Cooper hesitated, then nodded. "Yes. She directed me to remove entries that showed left-leaning misinformation sources. She said including them would muddy the message." The audience gasped. Michelle shot up from her chair, whispering fiercely to her attorney. Benton continued calmly. To clarify, Ms. Langford knowingly altered data to favor one political narrative? Yes, Cooper said. I warned her it was unethical. She said, we're not lying, we're simplifying for impact. The courtroom broke into murmurs. Reporters raced to tweet. The judge demanded order. Then Benton handed Dr. Cooper a tablet. Could you read the highlighted part of this email exchange aloud? Cooper adjusted her glasses. It says, Senator Kennedy is dangerous because he makes people laugh before he lands the truth. If we can't counter that, we must silence him. Gasps filled the room again. The words hit like a hammer. Michelle's reputation as a defender of free expression began to crumble. The irony was devastating. She had built her career on truth and transparency, yet her own email showed she tried to manipulate public perception. In those 9 seconds of silence before Cooper's answer, and the 9 that followed, the trial flipped upside down. Kennedy didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply leaned back, folded his hands, and whispered something to Benton that cameras couldn't catch. Michelle's lawyer tried to discredit Cooper, accusing her of betrayal and political bias, but the damage was irreversible. The witness had spoken calmly, factually, and devastatingly. Outside the courthouse, Kennedy's supporters erupted in applause. Social media exploded with clips titled, "The 9-Second Truth Bomb." Even neutral commentators admitted, it was the moment that shattered Michelle Langford's credibility. By the next morning, every news network replayed that scene. Pundits debated whether Kennedy had orchestrated it or merely benefited from luck. But those who knew him well said the senator had always trusted facts to speak louder than anger. Michelle returned to the stand the next day, visibly shaken but defiant. I may have made mistakes, she said, her voice trembling, but that doesn't justify mockery. It doesn't excuse cruelty. Kennedy's attorney responded softly. Mockery didn't destroy your credibility, Ms. Langford. Deception did. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours. Their verdict, in favor of Senator John Kennedy. The court found no evidence of defamation, and ample evidence that Michelle's own conduct undermined her claim of harm. When the verdict was read, Kennedy stood slowly. No triumphant green. No soundbite. He simply nodded and shook Benton's hand. Outside, reporters swarmed him. Senator Kennedy, what do you have to say after winning? One shouted. He paused, adjusted his tie, and looked straight into the camera. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Truth doesn't need permission to speak. It just needs courage. That quote spread faster than any headline. As for Michelle, she disappeared from public view for months. Sponsors cut ties, her show was canceled, and her foundation dissolved under scrutiny. Some sympathized with her downfall, arguing that she'd been overpunished. Others said she was the architect of her own collapse. But then, months later, something unexpected happened. Michelle reappeared, not on a talk show or in a courtroom, but in a quiet interview with a local newspaper in Georgia. I learned something, she said softly. Truth isn't a brand. It's a mirror. And sometimes when you look into it, you don't like what you see. The interview went viral, not because people pitied her, but because she finally sounded human. The tone of a woman stripped of pretense, finding humility in the ruins of pride. Meanwhile, Kennedy's popularity soared. His speech from the Senate floor weeks later was replayed across networks. He said, "Free speech isn't always polite. It's often inconvenient. But when we let lawsuits silence disagreement, we stop being a republic. We become a reality show." The chamber erupted in applause. Even some of his critics admitted, he turned a political attack into a lesson on principle. Years later, historians would look back at Langford versus Kennedy as one of the most defining cases for freedom of expression in modern politics. Not for the verdict itself, but for those 9 seconds of truth that revealed more than hours of arguments ever could. In the end, the lawsuit that was meant to end John Kennedy's career only fortified it. And the woman who tried to control the narrative became its warning. Because, as Kennedy once said, you can't sue the sun for shining too bright. You can only learn to stand in its light.